everyone, Rascal here.
And Mama, welcome to our podcast.
In today's podcast, we're covering a huge holiday classic that eventually grew into a franchise,
Home Alone. I can't believe it took us this long to finally do a podcast on this franchise.
Yes.
Now, 8-year-old Kevin McAlister, who's now 30-something,
right,
accidentally left home alone from his family on vacation.
Yes.
He revels in his newfound alone time, but when the Wet Bandits
yes,
target his house to rob, it's up to him to protect his home.
Yes. And before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, and click notification buttons on future podcasts and little pause videos.
And we're really happy to finally cover this. No, it's not animated, but it's like watching a live action animated movie with the silliness and the plot lines and the goofiness that ends up happening with the Wet Bandits. You know, this would be a blueprint for those people who want to do adaptations to do this one, because it reads like it even though it's not.
Yeah.
And it's, again, as you mentioned, it's such a huge holiday classic. It's well loved, and it's so entertaining and so fun and so perfectly done that not only would you watch it every year over and over and over and laugh like you've never seen it before, but it's one of those few holiday movies that has been made recently. What I mean by recently, not made in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, or 70s. Mm-hmm. So I would say from the 80s forward, that is perfection. Right. There is nothing about this movie that could have been better.
Right.
Absolutely nothing.
And there's nothing else like that, and still hasn't been anything else like that, despite them having a bunch of sequels. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people forget, I think it's always watched every year. Most people watch the first one or the first two. Mm-hmm. And as it went on, people didn't really expect this to keep going because this was a one-of-a-kind film. Mm-hmm. So having 4 or 5 sequels, well, now 5 or 6, because with Disney Plus, with Home Sweet Home Alone and rebooting it.
Home Alone 13.
Right? Or The Simpsons, Home Alone 24. We left Kevin at home, he's only 37. It's great to always go back to the original, because usually, they're all saying you can't beat the original. And in this instance, it's true. The second one wasn't bad at all.
Very true.
It was just the same thing in a bigger setting, but it wasn't bad. But the first one will always be the best.
And the second one did have the endearing quality.
Still,
it was fun. It did have almost all the elements of the first, but after number 2, stop watching.
Yeah.
That's what we advise. But this movie helped to make the majority of the kids that were in this movie star, including Macaulay Culkin. And you had some comedic favorites like John Candy and Catherine O'Hara. Mm-hmm. And they were known from being on SCTV. I think that's what it was. And doing some other comedies as well. And you had John Hurt playing the dad, and this was a kind of different role for him at the time he did this, because he was known for doing drama. So this was a very different role for him.
Right.
And what's really wonderful about this movie, it is absolutely, truly a family movie.
Yeah.
And all the actors, the main actors, adult actors, I should say, that were in it, they were in these perfect roles that match them in terms of they hadn't done movies that were really violent, or horror movies, or movies that would take you out of the element when you saw them and make you think of the things they had done.
Yes.
The casting was perfect. Again, it couldn't have been better. All the kids were wonderful. It's just, again, I know I keep saying it's a perfect movie.
Right.
And you really got to showcase the acting skills of Macaulay Culkin. This kid was what?
I think he really was 8.
Yeah, he was 8 years old and had this amazing acting ability, this comedic timing, this adorable face, everything that made you love him as a character, even though he was being naughty.
Right. And when you think about it, a lot of movies, whether they be Christmas or not, they really have taken this formula Home Alone created, with the kid being left home alone and trying to scare off bandits by putting a bunch of elaborate traps made out of toys and things in the house. So so many people have done this formula, so much so that almost every knockoff Christmas movie or independent film eventually goes to the people trying to break in, and it's usually a kid or a dog or something, and they outsmart the criminals, and it's been done so much, you kind of forget, you know, this was an original idea. It's just been replicated so much, it almost feels like, you know, you've seen it so many times. You might feel a little bit jaded, but you really shouldn't, because this movie started off, it still has its charm, it still holds up. It doesn't feel like it's dated in any way when it comes to the story. You can still enjoy it now as much as you did when it first came out.
And also it had a believable mom. The family, they were successful. And the filming was done in this beautiful home in Chicago, in the suburbs of Chicago.
Right.
And the house is still there, and every now and then you'll see it online where the people show you this is where it's actually become an attraction from what we've seen online.
Yes.
But she was a real mom, a career woman, and they had these multiple kids, and their family was taking a family vacation with, you know, brothers and sisters and cousins, which was wonderful, together to go to France.
Yes.
Instead of staying at home, which was really different. And when she realized what had happened, it wasn't like, okay, I don't believe this woman is doing this. It wasn't unrealistic. You believe that she really felt the guilt of having messed up and what had happened between them prior to them leaving.
Right.
The things they said to each other.
Right.
And all she wanted to do was get home, and she didn't care what she had to do, whom she had to barter with, whom she had to beg. She left the rest of the family, since of course she had all the adults there together, but she did everything she could to get back to that child.
Right.
And I thought it was such a realistic portrayal. It wasn't something you would look at like, oh, this wouldn't happen. No, it looked really real, and O'Hara's just perfect at having that balance of being the mom that was stern, the mom that had regret. She admitted she was wrong, which really at that time didn't happen a whole lot. It definitely doesn't happen now, where there's a mother who says, I was wrong and I'm sorry. No, she did it, and it was so beautiful. And he learned, he thought he didn't want them there. And as we said at first, it was fun like on Jimmy Neutron. But then after a while, he realized he was alone.
Right.
And all the things that irritated him and bothered him, he thought about the people who loved him, he missed.
Right.
And he really regretted it, and he was really sorry.
Right. And, as you mentioned it with the mom, she, to me, one of the times we watched, she actually reminded me of the mom on The Iron Giant, where it was very believable. It didn't feel like you're watching an actress play a role and just trying to do the role. It felt like for a long time in the movie, like you were really watching a real parent. And I think that was one of the biggest strengths of Home Alone is, like you said, it just felt like it felt real. It's like kind of like how Mitchell vs. Machines had.
Oh, I wish I could be there.
Right. It was kind of like how Mitchell vs. Machines has a word. This feels like a real family, not a movie family, not a Simpsons family, not a caricature family. It just felt like this was a real family, and just the strangest incident you can think of for this movie.
Another thing that I really loved about this movie, which again doesn't happen now, is not only did he realize he was wrong and apologize to her, but they always thought he was helpless and little, and he couldn't do anything, and he always had to have people help him. And while he was gone, he had watched his mom and his dad and his brothers and sisters, and he had watched what they did to do laundry, cook food, and everything. And he actually took care of himself realistically.
Right.
He wasn't perfect,
right,
but he did it he reasonably took care of himself without any adult supervision.
Right.
And he didn't burn the house down. He
right.
didn't destroy it.
He didn't throw a
the
party.
Wet Bandits did it. But he took care of everything on his own. He was even smart enough to take his little money, well, his brother's money, he took out and go shopping, and he knew what to buy and everything. And that reminded me of one of the good things about Sun and Moon that we saw, where Ash, when he was with Professor Kukui, and he couldn't take care of himself, and I was like, okay, now Kevin at Home Alone could do it, but Ash can't, and he's been traveling to all these different regions all these years, but suddenly he couldn't take care of himself.
Oh, man.
That was the first thing I said, and you started laughing. I'm like, okay, this doesn't make sense. But that was another thing. And you don't see that now, where people admit they're wrong, people say they're sorry, people grow and learn from their mistakes and admit error. No one wants to be wrong, not only in real life, but in the movies that are made now.
Right.
And that's an element that's missing. Everyone makes mistakes. We all grow from those mistakes if we are fortunate enough to learn from them. And in this movie, every single person in there, even the bully brother, learned and grew from the experience.
Right.
Even if he go 1, B, and D, still learn from the experience.
Yeah, that's really true. And again, movies really aren't made like this anymore. And when they do make something that's like watching a classic, it skyrockets in the box office because people really want to see movies like this. No matter if it's a holiday, family, action, or something, the movie that you would see at the time these were coming out is what people still want to see. And when they finally get one, it does phenomenally. And you would hope that this would also continue a trend of having more movies like this where you're actually getting back to the type of films where more groups of people can come, sit down, watch it, take their kids, and not to be concerned about content or anything, because this is definitely a film.
And Santa isn't being off.
Right.
And things like that. So what I really want to say is, the closest thing we've had to something like this hasn't been live action. It was animated until it got changed, and that was The Loud House. It's the same exact type of feel, believability, realism, fun, lessons learned. And as you know, I used to love when the original Lincoln would talk. I could listen to him talk all day. So what makes this movie really just a gem is its endearing quality, the family, and it was a whole giant blended family of people that weren't perfect.
Right.
Everyone had something wrong with them and had issues.
Right.
But they were family. They were dealing with each other. They were traveling together, even though they, having a little arguments, spats, but they weren't serious when it came down to the wire and they realized what had happened. They all pulled together. You don't see that happen anymore either.
Right.
Also, another thing is it's nice to see people who are doing well in a movie. I don't know about some of you, but for me, I like seeing that because that gives me something to aspire to. I want to do better. I want to be better.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with people wanting to live comfortably and surrounded by beautiful things and things that make them happy.
Right.
This family was. And it wasn't presented in a way that it was uppityness or capitalistic or they were wealthy and snobbish. They had worked hard and this is what they had and they took care of their children. That's another element you don't have.
Right.
There's so many elements that don't exist. And the last one I want to mention, I know you've got to mention some more, is the neighbors. A couple of neighbors were realizing, haven't seen the parents, I've seen him by himself, I thought they were on vacation, and actually started watching him. And like the gentleman whom he thought was scary, but who actually turned out to be a really good guy. Where the neighbors and the adults care and look after other people's children and aren't afraid of being accused of something or anything that happens now. And no one has to ask them to do it. They were like, okay, watch him. Even the girl who was at the store and checking the register, are you sure you're not alone?
Yeah.
And do I need to? That doesn't happen now. Everybody is in their own kind of class, their own little bubble, only concerned about themselves. As you mentioned earlier, this is the type of movie they just aren't made anymore. This is America that doesn't exist anymore. And I think that's another reason so many people who grew up watching it, who, regardless if it was when the movie came out or being introduced to it later, like you were, by family and friends, that you keep going back to because it's a feel-good movie and it's a fun movie and it's a time that no longer exists. And yes, nostalgia clouds your mind when you watch it. But in this case, it's a wonderful, beautiful thing because it's fun.
Right.
And it just makes you appreciate not only what you have more, but the season as well.
Yes, absolutely. And
cute violence.
Right. And one more thing I like to mention is that you kind of get hints of that in a few of the Christmas movies on Netflix. There are some people trying to recapture that magic feeling that you had when you watch these types of films. Yes, Klaus was probably the biggest example on why it was such a huge hit, is because it felt like these types of movies, regardless if it was animated or not. It kept that feeling you had when you watch a film for the holidays or just any time of year.
And Santa's Apprentice, I know it's not on there anymore,
yes.
but it was put out by
Cartoon Saloon.
Thank you.
Yes,
that's another one.
And then every year, Netflix has movies come out for the holidays, and they kind of end up becoming like Hallmark, where they have a cheesy rom-com movies, and a few of them we did actually enjoy.
Yes,
and
definitely.
we love the majority of the animated ones they have on there. And there are a lot that it just kind of like parody, like they're kind of making fun of people who like these types of movies, and they turn them on their head and make them the most despicable thing possible. And it's like you're missing the whole point of why the other holiday movies were working. Stick to this formula.
And why decades later, 10, 20, 30,
yes,
40 years in some cases, and if you're going as far back as like some people love Miracle on 34th Street,
right,
It's a Wonderful Life, those type of movies that were made long before the majority of people on here, any of us were born, they're still favorites that are being watched because it has those qualities.
Right.
So if you have seen, and you have to have seen,
right,
Home Alone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7, let us know what you think in the comments below.
I'm surprised they haven't done an animated one yet at this point.
And if you haven't seen it and you don't own it like we do, get out there and purchase it. You probably can still get it pretty cheap, like $3 to $5 on Amazon.
Yes.
They have it for sale every year at a really great price, just like Christmas, the Christmas Story as well.
Right.
Which we now own, but we still watch it on TV when it comes out.
Right.
So yeah, you can get it and own it for really cheap, and you can also get the collection now. And just watch it and enjoy it again and again and again each year.
Right.
You definitely won't get tired of it.
And if you haven't already, subscribe for updates and weekly videos on your favorite anime series, anime shows, and all things animation.
Absolutely. And we thank you so much for your support and watching. We would love to support you as well. If you want us to check out your channel, put the name below.
Yes.
Even better yet, add a link. We'll check it out, and we'll be sure to give you a subscribe.
Yes. So, thank you so much for watching. I'm Mask Entertainment.
And I'm Mom Entertainment.
Have a fantastic day.
Peace.